Now, many people are unaware of the Capital Region's strong ties to the Underground Railroad. Well, believe it or not, a lot of people who are seeking freedom traveled right through our area, and people living here, they helped them all along the way.
For Women's History Month, we are taking a look at some of the women who helped make the path to freedom a reality for so many.
The Underground Railroad was naturally steeped in secrecy, bringing people fleeing slavery into a new life. But now we're shining a light on some of the women who did that secretive and important work.
The first one that's closest to what we think about a lot here is Harriet Myers. Born free. We don't know a lot about her growing up, but we do know that somehow in that mix she got some education.
Paul Stewart is the co-founder of the Stephen and Harriet Myers Residence, now home to the Underground Railroad Education Center. Harriet Johnson married Stephen Myers in 1827, and they lived here.
Throughout their life as a married couple, you see her investing herself in activism in a way that maybe women in the 19th century maybe would have considered it improper, but she was very, very well-read, and she is known to have been doing the proofreading for the publications that Stephen Myers was involved with producing.
Another woman who was in the publishing world, Marianne Shadd Carey. She was born in Delaware and educated black children, but moved to Canada after the passage of the Fugitive Slave Act in 1850.
While they're in Canada, one of the things that she did was organize a newspaper called the Provincial Freeman. As things were back in those days, it wasn't quite entirely proper for a woman to be the publisher of a newspaper. So she got Samuel Ringgold Award and another individual to be the upfront people for the paper, but she was really the heart and soul of the paper.
Stewart says that paper only ran for a couple years, but it was an important tool for education and advocacy on issues of justice and anti-slavery. You might have seen this book called Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. A woman named Harriet Jacobs wrote this. She came to our region when she was a fugitive from slavery. It describes life as a woman enslaved, the constant sexual threat, as well as fear for her children. She describes escaping her captor and hiding in her grandmother's crawl space across the street.
Hid there in basically a crawl space for 7 years while she attempted to manipulate through her relatives the enslaver that had enslaved her to get her kids away from that enslaver to another enslaver that she thought would take better care of them before she left the area. Eventually, she was reunited with her kids.
And of course, you can't talk about the Underground Railroad without mentioning Harriet Tubman. The National Park Service says Tubman helped lead 70 people to freedom.
Another individual who certainly has a story through our area in terms of her involvement with the rescue of Charles Knoll, a fugitive slave in Troy, but also ties to many individuals in the region.
Just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to naming the women who helped save so many here in the Capital Region and bring a new life to those previously enslaved.
I feel like there's so much we take for granted now these days, but then you hear stories like that, these heroic things that people had to do just to fight for their rights. It really makes you, I think, appreciate how far we've come in many ways.
Right, and you hear a lot about the big names like Harriet Tubman, but you forget sometimes, I think there were a lot of people whose stories we have not heard, stories maybe we will never know, who made such a difference, and it was fun to learn about some of them. Especially,
we have a journalist that you were discussing too, and writers, which is a big part of things we do every day, and getting their perspective on it, that's pretty neat.
It was fun to learn about them for sure. So we have more stories to come for Women's History Month.